Welcome back to War Thunder and welcome aboard ships. Now this is kind of the first video of this iteration, and it will be probably the last one. And I'm kind of disappointed, but I kind of see the pattern emerging that I actually don't like to see. It's nice and interesting to see that they actually can shoot through water, at least with the Russian PT boat. You know, it's just right there. And this is something that I really like to see: weather effects. Big waves and also rain and fog and some more of this stuff. I've seen it in numerous battles. Most of the time the water was more or less calm and not so huge waves, as you can see in the background. By the way, I will feature various different scenes of various different gameplays with some nice set 20 gameplay in the end, where I just was done with it and just blasted my way through the enemy team. Now, the biggest changes for all intents and purposes that Gaijin has done in the last 3 tests were about planes. And I don't think that this is the way that, you know, a naval pre-beta test should take, at least in my opinion. But before we go into details, let me just tell you one thing after I do this submarine stuff. Whatever Gaijin is working in the background, what they try to develop and what they come up with ideas and what they then, you know, throw out of the window again, I don't know. I just can tell you the stuff that I see for myself when I do the naval testing. And I can just look at the calendar and see that there is literally no progress for quite some time. At this point in time, a lot of you might be already bored. Understandably so. And I've purchased my package with the Soviet river patrol boat like 1.5 years ago, and so far I not had access to it once. To similar boats, yes, but even that is like a year ago. And since then we saw numerous changes. We saw the introduction of new maps, we saw the changes of maps, we saw the introduction of destroyers and various different mechanics, amongst them the aiming system, which hugely sucks. Especially, well, it's kind of understandable on destroyers because they have some sort of fire direction system, and that makes sense, you know, when you shoot at longer ranges beyond 2 kilometers or 3 kilometers, whatever, you know, was the normal case in naval warfare in destroyer versus destroyer engagements. It varied a lot. However, the important part is, on patrol boats, this system is just absolute stupid, and I've mentioned it numerous times. This aiming system for ships is debatable, but for patrol boats that fight in close quarters, in knife fighting circumstances, it is important that you can react in time. When somebody is coming around the corner, I have other things to do than to hold still and range find the damn thing. I have to avoid torpedoes, I have to change my course, I have to shoot at aircraft, and all of those things are highly difficult if I have to range find. And the next thing is, I know how the range finding system works. I can deal with it, but that doesn't mean that I'm happy with it. No, it's bullshit. That's what it is. And again, for destroyers, then later on for cruisers, it will make sense. And it does make sense to a certain degree, but not on patrol boats. And that is the thing that I just want to express here. And especially, for example, with the American Alco PT boat, we see another problem that I already have mentioned that has not been changed. And that is that you should be able to unite the entirety of all your weapons that you have. 20mm 50 caliber machine guns, the 40mm cannon and the 37mm cannon should fire together. And the funny thing is, in the American Alco PT boat, if you go back to the secondaries, they are way more efficient in the patrol boat fighting than the big guns. At least that's my observation. And you know, the funny part is, let's talk about planes. With this weekend, we saw that you could use planes of your own lineup or put them in a lineup for yourself at up to battle rating 5.0. So obviously I took one of my favorite bombers in the game, not performance wise but look wise, the G5N1, and I equipped it with the 800 kilogram bomb. In the background you see me dropping it right now on a destroyer that seemed to have beached. We all can see how this is going, and at this altitude of around about 2000 meters you are more or less safe from the normal gunners. Oh boy, I love that. However, there is another problem, and that is, dropping on stationary targets is nothing that is too difficult, at least in my books. I'm not as good anymore as I once was in the old arcade days, where I managed to drop like the 250 kilogram bombs from 5000 meters very precisely in the middle of a light pillbox. Those days are gone for me, but for destroyers, you know how much you have to lead them. I once had practice with my Wellington of various different designations. Again, back in arcade with the 4,000 pound bomb, I was pretty good at leading those AI destroyers. Yes, I know it's an AI destroyer, however, we kind of have the battleship World of Warships syndrome for most destroyer captains in War Thunder. They just drive in a straight line without changing the course. Another thing that really pisses me off, the only destroyer that on a regular basis snipes me from an altitude of over 2000 meters is the Project 7Y. Every single battle, I swear to you. And it didn't matter in which kind of a plane I was, bomber wise. It also happened to the P8, and yes, I tried it out with the 5-ton bomb, but the problem with this thing is that you rarely see many enemies clustered together. Yes, it has a splash radius, yes, it's deeply satisfying to literally blow something out of the water, but to rely on it is, yeah, you have one drop, you just have one drop, and that's all. What also happened to me was that while the bomb was in the air, the enemy that I was dropping the bomb on was actually, already destroyed by gunfire. And yeah, that was really great. Now, amongst all the complaints that I ever had in recent times, one already was reworked, and that was we now have again unlimited amount of armor piercing shells, at least when it comes to the ammunition capacity. And yes, that was a first strike with the first hit the Napalmratte AZ-20. And now let's go into the gameplay of a Z-20 actually, in mid-game taking on enemy destroyers. And while I blast my way through the enemy team, again, just with AP shots, just aiming at the ammo rack. I don't care for anything else on an enemy destroyer. I want those ammo rack hits. One thing is important, the sound mod that I use for tanks, to which you find again the link in the video description will also help how to install it and so forth. It also affects the guns on ships mostly, and for example we have the Jagdtiger sound or the mouse gun sound for the 128mm on the Z-20 destroyer, and that is also replaced by the same gun sound that replaces the German 128mm, and in this case the gun sound is way better. That looked amazing. So yeah, shredding an aircraft. The AI gunners are extremely random, and sometimes, most of the time, it's just better to leave the job to the AI gunners on your ship to shoot down aircraft, because if you try it, the gun traverse is too slow, the firing is not direct but indirect, it's just not nice to do. Nice ammo rack hit. So the PT versus PT fight is actually pretty good, unless destroyers interfere, and that's the problem, because still the maps have not been reworked. So the first thing that a lot of destroyer commanders are doing, for example on this bloody map, is to charge into A and B instead of going around to fight on C, because that's just too far for them. And you know, for the average player, you cannot really blame him, and that's the sad part, because it's the sensible thing to do. Now, this section is very similar to the Duck Talks section that I mentioned about, and yeah, I mean, I have AP shells, and the funny part is AP shells are mostly better in every situation, so no need to really switch to armor piercing shells. It's better to fight enemy destroyers with it. It's much more efficient, and this is again one of the reasons why I despise the Yugomo, because I just cannot kill anything with it, despite going for the internal components or the torpedoes on deck, which now explode. And yes, I've destroyed things with the Yugomo, but not very reliable. That's the thing. It's not fast, it's not efficient. The enemy has time to retaliate, and then I might win the fight, but I'm heavily crippled. And that's not a fight that I want to go into, where I will win, but I'm getting punished by certain game mechanics for it. That's just not how it should work. And yes, I prefer to shoot into the water to finally find then the ammo rack than to hit the superstructure, because it's pretty damn hard to find those ammo racks. But when you do, it's spectacular, isn't it? So in a nutshell, I'm kind of disappointed. We saw no new maps, we saw no new vehicles, we saw the very same old game mechanics, and Gaijin is just going forth and backwards with what they are changing within the game. I mean, they once removed the majority of AP shells. You had a very limited amount of them. Now they are back, and you can switch between the shell types like you used to. The biggest change in the last 2 tests is about planes, and they wanted to actually do it already in the 3rd last test, and that was actually something that they missed to do. So that test seemed to have been ineffective for what Gaijin tries to test out. For me as a normal player, it's really annoying, and I see no progress at this point in time. It's very easy to call Gaijin lazy, and you know, if I would say that they seem to have lost interest in developing this game mode, then I'm not wrong. You see, I see no progress. I don't see any, you know, spectacular things that they want to change. The last spectacular thing that they actually wanted to test was the ice convoy thing, and that is something that we have not seen since. They scrapped it, and I think this is a shame, because it was kind of promising. It should have been polished, it should have been more worked on it, yes, but to completely let it drop and, you know, do the usual domination nonsense thing, and also, you know, make PT boats irrelevant. If even one destroyer driven by a more or less capable person decides to go into the what I call the PT boat area, and it's just annoying, you see. And then again, the most focus was about planes. In a pre-beta test about ships, I have no idea what I should say about this, because I have no words for that, you see. That's the problem. Yeah, so more focus on planes. It was kind of fun to try them out first. German CAS sucks hard. The 30mm, the 75mm, the 50mm. It's first of all really damn hard to hit the ammo rack, then to also reliably do damage with it, and you are getting shot down repeatedly because German planes are extremely fragile. MB410s, Ducks, you really don't feel any kind of their heavy fighter or ground attacker design. One hit and your wings fall off, but you cannot kind of rush in like some of the Japanese planes or the American planes with their high-speed drop torpedoes. It's just a big mess, and again we kind of will see the same nonsense when it comes to the game mode and what it's called than we saw with tanks. And in tanks, again, planes are the one thing that annoys the living hell out of me. And if Gaijin again decides to go into the direction of combined arms, and, you know, giving so much preference to planes, then I will not have a lot of fun. And if you then have fun, is a thing that you must decide for yourself. But we are very, very far away from any kind of release. And in a nutshell, what I constantly see in all of plane and tank and also ship development is that Gaijin tries to bite off more from the development cake than they can actually chew. Because none of the systems that have been implemented so far are working even, you know, to a certain degree of satisfaction or are reliable, but then another system gets implemented and another system, and at the end of the day we are half finished with this system, the other system is completely broken, this was better when it was different in the first time. For example, the PT boat aiming system in the beginning it was fun, okay? Yes, it might have been a bit arcadey, but to replace it with something that doesn't work and is very unsatisfying and unpractical in use is just not the way this game should go. I've mentioned it with the S100 and the Alco PT that the system is in their disfavor, you know, but it's so much more favorable for the Russian PT boat, for the British PT boat it makes actually no difference at all, and also for the Japanese it makes no difference at all. And the Italian, well, forget about the Italians at this point in time. So the two best destroyers, in my opinion, are the Z20 and the Fletcher, but the Fletcher is more or less game breaking. And then for the PT boats, it depends on your personal flavor. The S100 with the working 30mm is just an absolute monstrosity on an equal fight. It wins. You just shred the enemy with the AP or the API belt. It's just insane, the damage output. But yeah, it's also pretty tanky, so forth. The maps are the same like in the last few tests. The ships have not really changed. It's, you know, 2 steps 4 and 3 steps back, and then the next patch 3 steps ahead and 2 steps back, and again the most changes are about planes. At the moment it is dead for me in terms of, you know, desire to play it. And the only thing that I was playing it for is for making a YouTube video about it, to let you know which kind of progress it has made. The answer is none. So that's it for me today. Thanks for watching, thanks for listening. Let me know in the comment section what you think about this, if I'm right, if I'm wrong, which changes you would want to see. And yeah, we'll see each other on the waves of War Thunder.